I know.
Good morning. Today's topic is the holiday of Purim. Purim begins Monday night to Tuesday, and Monday is called the fast of Esther. And there's a very interesting law in the Code of Jewish Law that if you read the Megillah backwards, you are not fulfilling the mitzvah of hearing the Megillah. And the question is, how many people are going to read the Megillah backwards? I mean, do you read a book backwards? Do you read your newspaper backwards? So it seems like a cryptic law. If you read the Megillah backwards, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah of hearing the Megillah. But it means something totally different. It doesn't mean backwards where you read page 100 and then 99 and 98. It means if you read or hear the Megillah with a backwards attitude where, what does this story have to do with me? It happened so many centuries ago. What does it have to do with me? It's a nice story. It's an interesting story. It's a story of intrigue, of assassination attempts. It's a very exciting story, right? But what does it have to do with me? And the answer is there's so much to do with us, as we'll soon see. But our attitude cannot be when we read the Megillah that it's irrelevant to 2023. Because as we know, every book of the Torah, and the book of Esther is part of the Torah, the written tradition, Torah Shebeksav, is relevant as it was when it was written then, as it is today when we read the Megillah. So you know the story of Henry Kissinger. Did I ever tell you the story of how they asked him, Henry, Mr. Kissinger, how are you such a fantastic diplomat? You know the story?
I don't think so.
Okay. So by the way, Henry Kissinger was in the White House at an event, and my father was covering the event. There was some foreign ambassador for Yediot Ahronoth, which was the largest Israeli daily. My father was the chief American correspondent. So my father was at the event covering the story. So Kissinger comes over to my father and says, Mr. Jacobson, you have to stop criticizing me in the Allgemeine Journal, which was my father's Yiddish newspaper.
Right.
My father, he says, why? Because my father, Louis, reads the newspaper every day. And he always tells me, Henry, why are you doing this to Israel? Why are you doing that to Israel? My father would criticize Kissinger.
Yeah, right.
Not always working in the best interest of the Jews. He worked what he thought was better for America, which we know, United States, which we know what's good for the United States is good for Israel, and what's good for Israel is good for the United States, because we're their only ally in the Middle East. So people said to Kissinger, how are you such a brilliant diplomat? How do you manage to be so good at negotiation? He says, I'll tell you how. I want to create a diplomatic relationship with the Serbians. So I travel to Serbia and I meet with the head of all the Serbian people. And I say to him, boy, do I have a match for your son.
Oh, come on.
Beautiful, brilliant, gorgeous, rich, intellectual girl. He says, what? You think my son is going to marry a spoiled brat? An entitled American? You got something coming to. He says, no. But it's not any girl. It's the daughter of Rockefeller. Oh, Rockefeller's daughter for my son. Perfect. Make the match. Then he travels to Switzerland. Then he meets with the head of the largest Swiss bank. He says, I want to suggest that you appoint a new president of the bank. He is the son of the Serbians leader. He says, what? You think a Serbian peasant is going to be the president of the largest Swiss bank worth billions of dollars? He says, hold on. This is not just any Serbian. He is the son-in-law of Rockefeller. So he says, okay, wow, that's a good idea. Yes, we'll appoint him. Then he travels back to the United States and he meets with Rockefeller. He says, Rockefeller, boy, do I have a match for your daughter. He is the son of the Serbian leader. He says, what? Are you crazy, Mr. Kissinger? You think a peasant is going to marry my aristocratic, blue-blooded daughter? Have you lost your mind? He said, no. He's the president of the largest Swiss bank. Wow, amazing. Yes, I want my daughter to marry this guy. He calls his daughter. He says, honey, come, I need to talk to you. I have the perfect match for you. He is the president of the largest bank in Switzerland. She says, Dad, you think I'm going to marry a banker? They're narcissistic. They're arrogant, hungry. They're mean. They're crooked. They're liars. I'll never marry a banker. He says, no, honey. This guy is a Serbian peasant. He's humble. He comes from humble beginnings. He has integrity. He had a rough life. Dad, perfect. I'm going to marry him. And that's how he created diplomatic relations.
Yeah, right.
So we read the story of Queen Esther. She is one of the most brilliant negotiators and diplomats ever documented in our history. When she has to go to King Ahasuerus to change the decree to get him to save the Jewish people, she does it in a very, very brilliant fashion. So although I have a lot to say, but we have a time limit today, as you mentioned, I'll just share one insight. When Mordechai comes to Esther, right? Remember Mordechai? And leader of the Jewish people. And he says to her, Esther, you know, there's a decree against the Jewish people. You need to go to your husband, the king, and get him to revoke it. Otherwise, on the 13th day of Adar, the entire Jewish nation will be, God forbid, annihilated. This was going to be another Holocaust. So there's a little talk back and forth. And she says, you know, I can't really go to the king, but I'm going to go because the king has a rule that if he doesn't summon you, you can't go to his inner chamber. And I haven't been summoned already for 3 weeks or 3 months. I forgot the exact number and if you show up, he could behead you because he had a paranoia that he would be killed. So he set up a whole security. No one's allowed to come unless they're summoned. And so if I show up at his door, I could be beheaded. If I don't find favor in his eyes, I could be beheaded. But she goes because she has to save her people. So what does she do when she comes to the entrance of the chamber? She stands there, and then the king sees her, and he sticks out his scepter, which means, yes, you can come in. And he says, honey, what are you here for? What do you want? She says, I'm making a feast, and I want to invite you and Haman. The king says, of course, whatever you want. Now, why doesn't she right away come into the chamber and say to the king, listen, there's a serious problem going on here. Did you know that I'm Jewish? And did you know that in a year from now, 11 months from now, I and all my people are going to be killed? Can you stop this, Your Majesty, my dear husband? She doesn't do that. She invites him to a feast. And then at that feast, he asks her, darling, what do you want? And she says, I want you to come tomorrow night to another feast with Haman. And only then, at the second feast, does she tell him, when he asks her, what do you want, my darling? You want half of my kingdom? I'll give it to you. She says, no, there's someone who's going to kill my people in the next year. Who's doing that? She points to Haman, and we know what happens. Haman is hung. So why didn't she right away sit down? Why make one feast? Why make a second feast? So if you read the Megillah and you analyze the story, you see that you're dealing with 2 psychologically impaired people. Haman, whose ego is larger than the United States of America, considers himself a deity, a god. Ahasuerus, the king, is an insecure, wishy-washy fellow. The Talmud describes him that he had no confidence, so he would sway one day like this, one day like that. He would always second-guess himself. Very insecure, paranoia king, like Stalin, who murdered over 30 to 50 million people. And remember, Stalin had this advisor, Beria, who was like the Haman to Ahasuerus. Stalin's Haman was, Ahasuerus' Haman was Stalin's Beria. And Haman created a paranoia in the king. He created a situation where Achashverosh said, the only one I could trust is Haman. He was the one who saved me from my queen, Vashti, who would have caused a revolution had I not killed her. And he saved me from the plot of the two guards, remember, wanted to poison me. And who knows if Haman wasn't the one who made the plot to create a paranoia in the king. They say that who poisoned Stalin at the end of his life? Who killed him? Beria. Because Beria found out that Stalin was now going to kill him. By the way, how did he build the confidence of Stalin? If you read the history, there was an assassination attempt against Stalin to kill him, which Beria created and then foiled the plot so that he would become.
Look good, yeah.
Stalin was crazy. Every day, my father interviewed Svetlana, his daughter. When she came to America, my father interviewed her.
Wow.
And he said, describe a breakfast with your father. She said, my father was brilliant. She said she would sit with him at breakfast. He would make a list of all of his enemies. And by the end of lunch, every one of them were hung, executed, or killed. She said, that was my father. A miserable killer, murderer, paranoia, dictator, I don't know what you want to call him. That was Stalin. He killed more people than the Nazis did. But But anyway, going back, so this was Haman. Haman created an environment where Achashverosh said, the only one I could depend on is my chief advisor, Haman. Look how he saved my life. So she can't just say to Achashverosh, honey, let's talk quietly. Because if Haman finds out that she is plotting against him, what will he do? He'll cause a revolution. He was so powerful. But she has him at the feast, and he's within her eyes' reach.
Yeah.
She set him up for execution. So Esther was brilliant. So she knew if she comes right away to the king will have her killed. Oh, you're Jewish? You're Jewish? Haman made a decree. You're one of them. So she had to create an environment where Achashverosh suspects that Haman is out to get him, and it's in his best interest to listen to Esther. So how does she do it? She makes a feast, and she says to the king in the words of the Megillah, let him, which means the king, come to my feast. When she invites the king and Haman to the second feast, she says to the king, let them come to my feast. Them. Now the king goes home after the first feast, and he's thinking to himself, why did she invite Haman also to the feast? Why not just me? Why not have an intimate dinner with me and her? What was Haman doing there? And it says his sleep was disturbed. Remember, he couldn't sleep, so he took out his book of journal, his chronicles, to see the history of who he has to honor or pay back. And that whole night he's worried. He's thinking, you know what? Maybe there's a little something going on with Haman and Esther. Maybe they're cheating behind my back. Then he says, maybe they're plotting against me. Maybe they're out to get me. Maybe Haman is out to get me. Maybe it's Esther. And his whole mind is creating a whole paranoia scenario of why did Esther say invite them when the first time she said invite me, now it's them? He's part of our inner circle, me and her. He's going to break up our marriage. So he creates a whole, in his mind, a series of doubts. This is what she does. So then he's wary of Haman because of Esther. So when he comes to the second feast, now he's receptive psychologically to listening to her because he's suspecting Haman of a plot against him. So when she says, there is a man who made a decree to kill me and my people, he says, Mi hu ze v'yeza, who's this? She points at Haman. And he says, Haman? And the king takes a step out of the room to go into his garden to contemplate the situation. Maybe he's smoking a pipe or a cigarette. And Haman, says in the Megillah, falls on the bed Esther's like couch bed to beg her for mercy. Achashverosh comes in, he says Haman on his wife's bed. What does he think? Kill him. You're on my wife's bed? Then my suspicion is true. Hang him on the same tree that he created to hang Mordechai, he gets hung. So you see, Esther couldn't just come to the king and say, honey, darling, there's a nation out that you're going to be annihilating them, and I'm part of them, the Jewish people. He was not receptive at that point. It created a series of diplomatic measures and psychological planning for her to set the stage for Haman to be killed, her people to be able to defend themselves, and Achashverosh should not behead her as well. You know, he could have also said, kill them both. It's very interesting, and we'll close with this, that it says everything is found in the Torah, you know, the 5 books of Moses. Where is the story of Haman? So when you read the story of Adam and Chava, remember in the tree, in the Garden of Eden, of the tree of knowledge, God says, you can eat from any tree, any plant, but not from the tree of knowledge. How does it say it in Hebrew? Hamin ha'etz, Haman, H, Hey, Mem, Nun, letters of Haman. From the tree you shall not eat. He gets hung on the tree, and it also defines his problem. When God tells Adam and Chava, you can eat from anything, but not from the tree, why do they eat from that tree? Because ego dictates to ourselves, what do you mean I can't have it all? Why can't I have it all? We always want what we can't have, even though we have everything. Okay, I have a beautiful car, but I want that car. I have a beautiful home, but I need a bigger home. I have a better job, but I want a better job. We always want better, better, better. And sometimes we have to analyze, is it the ego, or is it, no, I want to provide for my family, or is it my ego because I have to be better than him, better than her, more than him, more than them, you know, keep up with the Joneses. So Hamina Eitz is Haman. He is, everyone bows to him in the streets of Shushan. One man, an elderly Jew, Mordechai, doesn't bow to him, he goes crazy. What does he care? Everyone is bowing to him, everyone is lauding him, everyone is kissing his feet. Mordechai says, I can't bow to you, you're wearing an idol around your neck, I'm a Jew. He can't handle that. When one person he can't handle, he goes after him. The one tree they can't eat from, they have to eat from. This is human nature. But you have to check yourself at times and say, what do you mean? Why should it bother me? Everyone complimented me, but my arch enemy didn't compliment me. You can live without that. You get it? So
right.
Hates describes the problem of Haman, and he is hung on a tree, just like in the story of the Garden of Eden that alludes to what it was. So it's all connected. The whole Jewish world, the whole thing is connected. So what do we take out of this? I think two pivotal lessons from the Megillah one is that you have to seize the moment. Mordechai says to Esther, you do not know if this is the reason you were put in the palace, because this is the moment that you need to grab the opportunity to save your people. You never know, he says, the Jewish people will be saved. But the question is, will they be saved through you, Esther? Through you or through somebody else? The Jewish people will have the Geula. We will have our redemption. We will get what we need. But the question is, will it come through Margaret? Will it come through me? Or will it come through somebody else? When an opportunity presents itself, many times people like say, they'll do it. He'll do it. There's so many other people that could do it. There's so many people that could help. There's so many other people that can participate. What do I need? Think they need me? 1 in a million? They don't need me. There's other people. Always look at it that an opportunity presents itself. We have to grab it. Carpe diem. Seize the moment. We know God can accomplish the goal, but is it going to be through you is the question. That's what Mordechai tells Esther. Second thing is that we have to see in our lives that the second thing that we have to see how one woman, one person was able to save 127 nations of Jews. One woman. It takes only one person. One woman who sacrificed herself for her people. And that's what, because many times they say, we need more people. We need more. Sometimes one person can tip the scale. Esther was the only one who fasted on the day of Adar because everyone else was in the battle. Every Jew was on the battlefield. Every Jew, man, woman, and child, had to take a knife, a bow and arrow, a spear, lock themselves in their homes because any Persian can come in and kill them. That was the decree. The reversal of the decree wasn't that they can't do it. The reversal of the decree was you could now defend yourself. We allow you to defend yourself. But once the king gives a decree, you're not allowed to. The king says, I can never revoke my decree. In those days, if the king gave out a decree, you couldn't revoke it. Too bad. But what I could do, Achashverosh says, I could allow you to defend yourself against the armies. And that's what the Jews did. So everyone was on the battlefield. No one could fast. It's not permitted. But Esther was safe in the palace. So she was able to fast on behalf of her people. So she was the only one who fasted, and it was in her merit that the Jewish people were saved. Not only because of the fast, but because of the fact that she sacrificed her life. She could have been beheaded. It could have turned in many ways. The king would have said, oh, you're Jewish, off with your head. So, and then her greatest sacrifice was that she had to be stuck with a non-Jewish husband, an insecure paranoia, when her real husband, Mordechai, she couldn't go back to living with him anymore. Because once she was with the king, she couldn't go back to her husband and build a family with him. She stayed there for a decade. So that's the real sacrifice of Esther. Everyone went home to party with their Jewish families. She had to stay in the palace. She was the queen. She couldn't escape. She was stuck with Achashverosh. So that's the real self-sacrifice of Esther, that she could never go home and be with her husband and her people. She was forever alone, in a sense. And that was the true sacrifice. People don't realize. They think, oh, it's so great to be married. But if you read the stories of these kings, they were awful people. Drunks, paranoid, liars, cheats, had a whole harem. And Esther sacrificed her life and her to be with the king, that her people could be saved. So we have to take that in perspective, understand her real sacrifice here.
Did she ever get out of the palace, or do we know?
No. She had to live her lives there. She was, and as a matter of fact, the story of Purim is in the Persian Chronicles. It's part of their chronicles, the story of Esther. It's part of the Persian history books.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. People visited the gravesite of Esther and Mordechai. They're buried near each other. Because remember, Mordechai became one of the chief advisors of the king at the behest of his wife.
Yeah.
The behest of his wife. So Achashverosh took Mordechai as one of his chief advisors. He saw the brilliance of Mordechai. But a king Achashverosh is a king Achashverosh. He doesn't change his feathers.
Yeah.
So Purim, we have 4 mitzvahs.
Except that he was now accepting of Jews, I guess. I mean, since he had Mordecai.
The Jews were able to live in peace till the end of the days,
Right.
Until the next attack.
Right.
So the 4 mitzvahs of Purim, and we'll conclude, is 1, hear the Megillah twice, Monday night and Tuesday during the day before nightfall. Tuesday, eat a Purim feast, which means wash, have a beautiful feast, a meal, and give tzedakah to 2 charitable places, 2 poor people, 2 places, and give gifts of food to another Jewish family. The reason we do these 4 mitzvahs is to bring, why did the Jews were saved? Because of their unity, their harmony. And this is unity and harmony. When we share, when we give, when we feast with others, other Jewish families, this brings unity and harmony. And of course, we hear the Megillah twice. Monday night, right, at the breakfast, and Tuesday. And Monday is a fast day from from sunrise to sunset, to commemorate not the fast of Esther that they fasted on Passover for 3 days and 3 nights. Not that fast. The fast that Esther fasted the day of the battle. People mix it up. People say, why are we not fasting on Passover? Isn't that when Esther and Mordechai declared a 3-day fast? Remember that? There's a 3-day fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's on Passover. So why don't we fast on Passover like they did? Because first of all, you don't fast on a holiday. So why don't we fast after the holiday like we do? Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, you fast on the next day, Sunday. The answer is that some people do fast Monday, Thursday, Monday to commemorate the fast, but we fast on the day before Purim because that's when Esther fasted because their Jews went to battle, and it was a custom when Jews went to battle, the people who stayed behind fasted. So Esther's the only one not in the battle, right? Remember?
Mm-hmm.
To reiterate, she's in the palace. No one's going into the palace to hurt her. They're scared. But the other Jews, every other man, woman, and child is on the battlefield. There's no front line, but every home is a battlefield.
Yeah.
Because the Persians can kill any Jew wherever they are, in the shopping center, in their homes, in their backyards, riding their bikes.
They still want to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So Esther fasts on behalf of her people, so we remember that fast, not the fast
Okay.
that we did on Passover.
On Monday. Yeah.
The 3-day fast was the day before Passover, the first day Passover, second day Passover. That's when they fasted. Now, why were they allowed to fast on a holiday? Because it was dangerous times. It was an emergency. It was an emergency, so you're allowed to fast on Passover then. But now we don't fast on Passover because it's a yontif. It's a happy day. So we fast when
Okay.
Esther fasted. She fasted twice, obviously, on Passover, the 3 days, and also on the day before the war, the fast on the day of the war, the fast of Esther.
Okay.
The day of Adar. So have a happy Shabbos, wonderful Pesach.
Yeah.
And a real pleasure seeing you. And
Yeah. Oh, Mitch wants to say something.